Thanks for joining me at Tantrum House Studio D. I'm Melissa Delp. I enjoy lots of different types of games, but one of my favorite categories is word games. It's probably because I'm a writer and I love using words and language in interesting, clever ways. In this video, I'm going to talk about some of my favorite word games. Now, I'm focusing on hobby games, so you won't find classic games like Scrabble, Scattergories, or Boggle on this list, although many of them are great games. I also have a really hard time putting my favorites in order, so instead of a top 10, I've split the list into categories instead. For each category, I'll give a few of my favorite games. Some of these games we've purchased and had for years. Others were given to us as review copies, but all of them are ones I'd recommend if you like word games. Some of them we've even bought additional copies to give to family and friends. The main categories I'm going to mention are group games that you play on teams against each other, then cooperative games, and competitive games. Since there are a lot of competitive games, I'll break down that group into subcategories. So let's get started. Here are some of my favorite word games that use teams. So the first one I want to talk about under team games is Codenames. Big surprise. So this is by CGE and it plays 2 to 8 players, but really you can play any amount of players. Just split them up into 2 teams. Kevin and I were actually volunteering for CGE at Gen Con when the original game released, so it does have a very, I have a soft spot for it because we were there from the beginning. But I do love the game, even though it's been out for a while and there are so many versions of it. I love the challenge of trying to think of clues that connect several words, but then you have that tricky aspect of not overlapping with the other team's words or the assassin word. So I love the clever thinking that you have to do as the clue giver and even as the clue guessers. Now there can be some downtime if the clue givers are having trouble coming up with clues, but I think that's a minor, just little thing that people may not like about the game. I love that you can have any number of people. You just put them into 2 teams and that just about anyone can play, and those who aren't like super enthusiastic can kind of sit back and watch, and then those people will jump in when they have a good guess. So Codenames of all types, really love it, great team game. My next one is Decrypto. This one is from Scorpion Mask, and it plays in 2 teams, because that's a category we're talking about. It says 3 to 8 players, but again, you can have any number of people on each side. So this one is kind of different because your team knows the words that you have on your side. But then the clue giver on each side is trying to get their team to guess the correct sequence of words. So there are 4 words and then there's a 3-word sequence that they need to guess. The other team is doing the same for their side, but the 2 teams can intercept the messages from the other side. So you have to be obscure with your clues because you don't want it to be too obvious for the other team. So this game has that 2-part challenge of trying to get your team to guess the correct sequence of words, but also to keep it obscure enough that the other team isn't able to readily guess that sequence as well. I've played the extra large version of this and I really like that one because instead of the screens being like this big with tiny words, they're really big and it's easy for everyone to see. So especially if you're playing with a larger group of people, the giant extra large version is the one that I would suggest for Decrypto. Really interesting use of the team aspect. I have one more game in this category, and that is Word Slam from Cosmos. Now, the year this came out, it was really big at the conventions, lots and lots of people playing. This one actually says 3 to 99 people on the BGG entry. So lots of people, 2 teams. Basically, a clue giver from each team is looking at a clue card and they need to get their team to guess that clue. Both teams are trying to guess the same word, but you can only see the clues that your clue giver is giving you. And it's based on word cards. So your clue giver can't say anything, can't make gestures, and can only use the pre-printed word cards to try to get you to guess the word for the team. And it's really interesting because you're listening to the other team shout out guesses, and maybe you have like man and suit, and they're saying something like chicken, and you're like, what in the world? Because we're trying to guess the same word. So you can listen to what the other team is saying, and that might help you guess. So I thought that was really interesting. This is fast-paced, high energy, good for big groups. So team games, they're great when you have a large group or when you want to compete, but sometimes it's nice to work together. So next we're going to talk about great cooperative word games. So cooperative word games. The first one that comes to my mind is Letter Jam. This is also by CGE, like Codenames, and it's for 2 to 6 players. This is a game of deduction where you're trying to figure out what letters are in front of you. And you're going to get clues as people give a word. They're going to place little tokens in front of each person, and then you write down what you can see and try to fill in the blanks of what letter might be missing that could make the word. So there's a lot of spelling involved in this one. We regularly play this with my friend group and my family. Now, unfortunately, my mom's not the best speller, so we often have to have someone check her words to make sure she's actually spelled it correctly and that it's a real word and not something made up. But this one has a lot of cleverness in it with the words that you are giving to each other and trying to think of unique words, but not so unique that people don't know what you're actually trying to spell. But Letter Jam, one of my favorites, one that we play all the time. Another really popular cooperative game is Just One. For this one, it's from Repost Productions, and you are working together to get one player to guess the word. And what's going to happen is everyone else knows what the word is. They're going to write a one-word clue on their little stand. Then they're going to show those clues to everyone else. If any of them match, those clues get thrown out. So you may end up only having 1 or 2 clues left for the person to guess if a bunch of people said the same word. So you have to try to think semi-obscure, but then what happens is no one writes the obvious word because they're all afraid that someone else is going to write that obvious word. So really interesting trying to get the person to guess the word. I think this one's better at the higher player counts, 4, 5, 6, because you have more of that overlap and chances of people giving the same clue. Just One, really easy to pull out, not much explanation needed. So this next game is also from Repost Productions. They do some great word games. This is So Clover. It's for 3 to 6 players. I think you could play with 2 just fine. But basically you have these Clover trays that you're going to put 4 cards on them, and each of those cards have 4 words. It's going to make 4 sets of 2 words, and you're going to write a clue that connects the 2 words that are next to each other on each of the Clover sides. Then you're going to take those cards off. You're going to randomly select a 5th card and then present all those cards and your tray to the group, and they have to figure out how to arrange the cards so that they make sense with the clues that you've given. This is a little more difficult than it sounds because sometimes you get words like queen and waterfall together and you're trying to think of something that will connect them, but also not actually lead to a different word on those cards. So it's really interesting. So Clover is another one that we pull out a lot with our group because it's pretty quick and kind of has that clever clue giving and guessing aspect to it. My last game that I want to mention in the Cooperative Word Game category is Illiterati. This is from Gap Closer Games. It's for 1 to 5 players, and you have these letter tiles, and you're trying to make words with those tiles. So your first goal is to try to not have many leftover tiles at all to make words with them. Your second goal is to actually match your words to the goal card that you have. Now that might be something like words related to holidays or animals, or words that rhyme. So you're going to have qualifications that you have to meet, requirements. This is a cooperative game. If that's not difficult enough, you have the Illiterati enemies, and you're going to draw cards at the end of each round for them that have negative effects, make it harder to accomplish your goals. They can even chain attack if the same type of enemy is drawn. So you're going to have a round where you're working together really fast, real time, to try to make those words, meet your requirements, not have leftover letters. Then the Illiterati are going to do something nasty to you, and you keep going trying to meet all of the challenges. We found that at 5 players, this game was challenging to try to meet those requirements and not get destroyed by the Illiterati. I've heard that it's easier at the lower player counts, but I haven't played it at 2 or 3 yet. I'll be honest, my game group didn't really click with this one. I personally found it interesting, especially trying to make words that meet the requirements of my goals. So I would like to try it again at lower player counts, but if you like cooperative word games that are a little more on the tougher side, give Illiterati a try. Now I'm moving to the competitive category. The games to play when you want to impress with your vocabulary and outshine your friends. So first up for the competitive games subcategory are games that use spelling or individual letters. So the first one I want to talk about is Wordcraft. This is from Artipia Games. It plays 2 to 4 players. And this one, there is a grid of letter cards, and then there are goal cards that you can get extra points at the end of the game for meeting certain requirements. This game has an area control aspect, so when you spell your words, you're going to drop your cubes on the letters. And at the end of the round, whoever has the most cubes on a letter is going to score those points. So it's interesting, you're trying to work on the area control aspect, but then also the end of game goals. So you're trying to balance those two things as you make words. Now, as far as I know, this game has not gotten a US release yet. I hope Artipia or another company brings it to the US market because I really do enjoy this. It's an interesting take on the spelling words mechanic of word games. The next game, well, 2 games I want to talk about are Paperback and Hardback. These are from Fowers Games, and I believe they're both 2 to 5 players, but they have a deck building aspect to them where the letter cards have costs and values, and some of them have special powers and are worth different amounts of points. So you're spelling words with the letter cards you have and then using the value to then buy new cards to add into your deck to be able to spell even better things as the game goes on. And some of the cards are worth points, so kind of like Dominion where you have your action cards and your point value cards. The hardback version adds some genres, so you can actually do some combos if you have the same type of genres that you play in your words. So hardback's a little more complex than paperback, but both are very enjoyable if you like deck building and the spelling word aspect. Paperback does have an app that I've really enjoyed playing. I got it a couple months ago and enjoy playing it that way. The next game that I want to mention is Wordsmith. This is from Heidelberg Games, 1 to 4 players. And the unique thing about this game is you actually are making letters from pieces and then using those letters to make words. So it's not just, oh, I have these letters. It's, I have these pieces, and how do I want to arrange these pieces to make letters to then make words that are going to score points. So this one was really kind of using your brain in a sort of abstract way. Now there is a guide to show you how to make the letters, so you don't have to remember that. You can just look at the sheet for that and know how to make those letters. But Wordsmith, really interesting for the letter making aspect. The next game that I want to talk about is Wordsy. This is from Formal Ferret. It's 1 to 6 players, and it's going to give you some letter cards out in a grid. Everyone can use those letters, and they're going to be worth points if you use them. But you're not restricted to just using those letters. The letters are only going to be consonants, so you're going to have to add vowels in. You also may want to add other consonants that aren't visible in the grid. But the more that you use in the grid, the more points you're going to get. This game does have a fast-paced race aspect. So once the first player who writes a word down is going to get some extra points, and then everyone else is on a timer. I think it's about 30 seconds to write their word down. So you're not going to have like 3 minutes to think of the best word. You're going to have to do it quickly and then try to score the most points. Wordsy, really interesting. I enjoyed that one. It's fast-paced. The next one I want to talk about, I know there's a lot in this category, is Letterpress. See it there? Little box. This is from Osprey Games, and it's 1 to 6 players. This has a bit of card drafting, where you're going to draft letter cards. Then you're going to use the letter cards in your hand to create a word. The cards have different point values for the letters, but there are also challenge cards that have requirements. So it may say something like, use the most R's, or have a certain point value that you reach with your word. And you're trying to basically score the most value with the word that you make, and whoever does that gets to collect cards for the final round. And depending on where you score, you're going to collect a different amount of cards or have first choice of cards. The last round, you basically use the cards that you collected in the previous round, and whoever wins that last round wins the game. So the first few rounds, the scores are just allowing you to collect cards that you'll then use at the end. So I thought that was really interesting. I also really like games that have goals that you're trying to achieve. So I'm trying to do something specific with my word. So I'm trying to figure out how to achieve that with the letters that I have. Letterpress, small box, good word game. All right. I only have one more game in this category of using letters to spell words, and that is Letter Tycoon from Breaking Games. This is for 2 to 5 players, and it reminds me a little bit of a word game like Scrabble meets Monopoly. You're spelling words with your cards, and then you're collecting money. With that money, you can buy patents for certain letters. And if you own the patent for a letter, when other people use that letter, you get money from the bank. You want to have the most money to win. Some patents also give you special powers. So they may let you do something for extra scoring, or maybe they let you double a letter. So having different patents allows you to be more creative or have more flexibility with what you're doing. Now this game has been out of print for a little while, but I've heard recently that Breaking Games is going to be publishing a new updated version. So look out for that. I think there should be some announcements soon about a new version of Letter Tycoon. In addition to loving word games, I also love games that have logic or deduction in them. When they have both, it really gets me excited. So here are a few word games that also feature deduction. First one I want to mention is Decipher. This is from Heidelberg Games, and it's for 2 to 4 players. This uses the same letter pieces as Wordsmith. So you have the pieces that make the letters. In this version, you have one player who creates a word out of those pieces and then gives the pieces to the other players. They kind of like shuffle them up and give them pieces. So the other players don't know what the actual letters are or what the word is. It has a deduction aspect, kind of like Mastermind, with the players who are trying to guess the word, asking where certain pieces go, and then trying to deduce the letters, and then finally the word. So the person making the word has to be pretty crafty and maybe not use like super obvious letters that only have very distinctive pieces that go with them. So Decipher, really interesting aspect of deduction. The next one is Fiction from All Play in one of these tiny small square boxes. This is a 1 versus many game for 2 to 8 players. It's kind of like Wordle, but with a traitor. The one player is the librarian and selects a word from a famous book. There's cards. And then when the players make their guess, like in Wordle, the librarian will say green, yes, maybe, or it's in the wrong spot, or no. But one of the answers that the librarian gives is a lie. So the other players are trying to deduce what is correct. We know that there is one lie here. So through a sequence of words and clues, they're trying to figure out the truths and the lies to eventually get to that correct word. And they can occasionally ask about a letter, was this true, or was it fact, or was it fiction? And the librarian has to truthfully answer. So interesting aspect of Wordle with a twist. The next one is Werewords from Bezier Games. This version is for 4 to 10 players. There are some other ones that involve more players with more roles. This is basically 20 questions meets werewolf. So you have a social deduction aspect to the game, but then there's also the actual deduction aspect of guessing the word. And the werewolf is trying to lead people down the wrong path so they don't guess the word, and then all the villagers are trying their best to guess the word through a yes or no 20 questions style game. This one's a lot of fun. Play it a lot with my family. The last game that I'd like to mention in this category is kind of an honorable mention because this is a prototype version. It's not out yet. It's going to be on Kickstarter. And this is A Message from the Stars from All Play. It's 2 to 8 players, and you have, it's cooperative. You have an alien and then scientists, and they have messages that they're trying to get the other side to guess, and then also letters that that are special that they have to guess also. And I have a video about this if you want to learn more about it. But interesting word deduction game. I hope it funs. The last category for competitive word games is games that require you to write words or phrases. And the first one in this category is Glom from Indie Boards and Cards. This is for 1 to 6 players, and it says that it's a riot of rewording remarks. So basically, you're going to have to rewrite a common phrase, like the dog ate my homework, or maybe happy birthday, or a stitch in time saves 9, something like that. But there's going to be a card that gives you a rule that you have to follow. Maybe it's all words have to be 5 letters, or all words have to have an odd number of letters, or all sorts of things that might be rules. Then there's another card that gives you the scoring aspect. So it might be the phrase that has the most double letters or uses the letter E the most. All sorts of things for scoring. So you have this random rule card and this random scoring card, and then you have a phrase. I really love trying to creatively think through how to rewrite the phrase to follow all the rules and to score the most points. I think this would be a great game for a writing exercise in a creative writing class. As a professional writer, it just really sparks my creativity. So Glom has been a great game for me to play. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. The next game that I wanted to mention in this category is Blank Slate from the Op. And this is basically a fill-in-the-blank game. So blank night, game night, Friday night, all sorts of things that you could put into that blank. What you want to do, though, is just match with one other player so you get 3 points. If you match with more than one player, then you only get 1 point, and if you don't match with anyone, you get 0 points. So basically, you want to be mediocre. You don't want to match with everybody and have the most popular answer, but you don't want to be too out there and have no one match. This is a light game. It's easy to play with non-gamers. You can play as many rounds as you want. And it produces a lot of laughs to see what people come up with to fill in the blanks, because sometimes you find out there's someone who really doesn't think like anyone else. So those were the only two that I had for this category. Now, I know that there are a lot of other great word games that I could be talking about. Oh no, these are ones that I all mentioned. I know, I talked about so many, but I just, thanks Kevin. I just love word games. And if you love word games, they keep coming. If you love word games as much as, there's no more room. If you love word games as much as I do, then I hope you check out at least a few of these and let me know. What are your favorite word games? Which ones did I miss from my list that should be on there? Maybe I haven't played it yet, and I should. So let me know which ones are your favorites and which ones did I miss. Let me know in the comments, and thanks so much for watching.